Aphrodite usually gets reduced to one thing: beauty. That undersells her badly. This is a goddess who started a 10-year war without lifting a weapon, got caught in an embarrassing trap set by her own husband, brought a carved statue to life for a man who fell in love with his own artwork, and is directly responsible for the myth Rome told about its own founding. Beauty was just the tool. What she actually did with it is the real story. This channel already told the actual moment of her birth in our Uranos episode. Seafoam, gathering around the severed remains Kronos threw into the ocean, and a fully grown goddess rising from it near the island of Cyprus. That's Hesiod's version, and it's the older, stranger one. Homer tells a completely different story, one where Aphrodite is simply the daughter of Zeus and the minor goddess Dione, born the ordinary way any other Olympian was. Ancient sources never fully agreed on which account was true, and neither this channel nor the ancient Greeks ever really settled it. The disagreement matters more than it looks. A goddess born from violence and seafoam reads very differently than one born as an ordinary daughter of Zeus, and both versions circulated side by side for centuries. Aphrodite's beauty caused a genuine problem for Zeus. Every god wanted her, and the rivalry was becoming disruptive. His solution was to marry her off to Hephaestus, the god of the forge, whose own episode is still ahead on this channel. It wasn't a romantic match. Hephaestus was skilled, useful, and famously unattractive by divine standards, and the marriage read more like conflict management than a love story. Aphrodite never pretended otherwise, and the marriage set up the exact tension the rest of her mythology keeps returning to. Aphrodite began an affair with Ares, the god of war, and for a while they managed to keep it hidden. Helios, the sun god who sees everything from his daily path across the sky, didn't stay quiet about it and reported the affair straight to Hephaestus. Rather than confront the two directly, Hephaestus forged an unbreakable golden net, invisible and finer than a spider's thread, and rigged it over his own marriage bed. The next time Ares and Aphrodite met there, the net snapped shut around them both. Hephaestus then summoned the other gods to come see the two of them trapped and exposed, turning private humiliation into public spectacle. Ancient sources disagree on the mood in that room. Some describe the assembled gods laughing at the whole scene rather than condemning either of them, which tells you something about how differently the Greeks read this kind of story compared to how it reads today. Eris, the goddess of discord, wasn't invited to a wedding on Mount Olympus, so she threw a golden apple into the celebration inscribed simply, "For the fairest." Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite each claimed it, and the argument escalated until Zeus refused to touch the decision himself and handed it to a mortal, Paris, a Trojan prince. Each goddess offered Paris a bribe. Hera offered political power. Athena offered wisdom and victory in battle. Aphrodite offered him the love of the most beautiful mortal woman alive, Helen of Sparta, who happened to already be married. Paris chose Aphrodite. Before we get to the 10-year war that one bribe actually started, hit subscribe now so you don't miss exactly how far the consequences go. Paris took Helen back to Troy, and her husband, the Spartan king Menelaus, didn't let it go. That single choice is the traditional spark of the Trojan War, 10 years of siege that ancient Greek culture treated as its own defining historical memory. Aphrodite didn't step back once the fighting started. She actively protected Paris in combat, pulling him out of danger more than once, and she fought to protect her own mortal son, Aeneas, at Troy's side. In one especially rough moment, the Greek warrior Diomedes actually wounded her on the battlefield, drawing divine blood, a genuinely startling detail for how the Greeks usually treated their gods. And she fled the fighting in tears to be comforted by her mother, Dione, on Olympus. Troy eventually fell and burned. Aphrodite's chosen side lost the war outright. Aphrodite's son Aeneas, fathered with the mortal shepherd Anchises, survived Troy's fall and fled the burning city. Roman mythology picked up his story where the Greek sources left off. Virgil's Aeneid follows Aeneas across the Mediterranean to Italy, where his descendants would eventually found Rome itself. Centuries later, the family of Julius Caesar claimed direct descent from Aeneas, and through him from Aphrodite, worshipping her under her Roman name, Venus, as their own divine ancestor, and even building her a temple as Venus Genetrix, Venus the Mother, at the heart of Rome. A goddess best known for a marital scandal and a wartime bribe ended up as the mythological grandmother of an empire. Aphrodite fell deeply for a mortal youth named Adonis, known for being extraordinarily beautiful. He was killed while hunting, gored by a wild boar that some ancient sources claim was Ares himself in disguise, jealous over her attention. Aphrodite reached him too late, and where his blood touched the ground, anemone flowers bloomed, fragile and short-lived like Adonis himself. Zeus eventually settled a custody-style arrangement between Aphrodite and Persephone, goddess of the underworld, whose own episode already covers what she rules over. Adonis would spend part of each year with each goddess, dead and returned in a yearly cycle that ancient audiences read as a myth about the seasons themselves. A sculptor named Pygmalion, disillusioned with real women, carved an ivory statue so lifelike and so beautiful that he fell in love with his own creation. He brought it gifts, spoke to it, and eventually prayed to Aphrodite at her festival, asking for a wife as perfect as the statue he'd made. Aphrodite, moved by the sincerity of his devotion rather than mocking it, brought the statue to life. Ancient sources don't even bother naming her Galatea, the name popular culture eventually gave her centuries later. In the earliest versions, she's simply the woman Aphrodite made real. It's one of the rare myths where Aphrodite's power gets used as an outright gift rather than a complication. Aphrodite wasn't always generous with that power. When word spread that a mortal princess named Psyche was so beautiful that people had begun neglecting Aphrodite's own worship to admire her instead, Aphrodite sent her son Eros, the god later known as Cupid, to curse Psyche into falling in love with something monstrous. Eros accidentally pricked himself with his own arrow instead and fell in love with Psyche personally. Aphrodite spent the rest of that myth actively trying to keep the two apart, setting Psyche through a series of brutal, impossible tasks before finally relenting. Psyche was eventually made immortal and formally married into the family that had tried to destroy her. Even in a story about her own son, Aphrodite comes across as genuinely, humanly jealous, not simply generous and serene. Among Aphrodite's possessions was her girdle, a cestus that made anyone who saw it worn feel overwhelming desire for the wearer. During the Trojan War, Hera borrowed it for exactly that purpose. She wanted to distract Zeus long enough to secretly help the Greek side without his interference, and Aphrodite's own girdle was the tool that pulled it off. It's a small detail, but it's telling. Even a goddess actively opposed to Hera on the battlefield still had power other gods needed to borrow when nothing else would work. Aphrodite appears constantly across Greek literature. Homer gives her a real, active role in both the Iliad and the Odyssey. Hesiod's Theogony records her birth from the Seafoam. A separate Homeric hymn is dedicated entirely to her, describing her seduction of the mortal Anchises, Aeneas's eventual father. The poet Sappho, writing centuries later on the island of Lesbos, addressed entire poems directly to her, treating Aphrodite less as a distant Olympian and more as someone she could genuinely call on for help. Later, Greek philosophy split her worship in two. Plato's Symposium separates Aphrodite Urania, a higher, more spiritual form of love, from Aphrodite Pandemos, the ordinary physical kind shared by everyone, treating her as a genuinely complicated concept rather than a single simple figure. Aphrodite's name still shows up constantly without most people realizing it. The word aphrodisiac comes straight from her. The planet Venus carries her Roman name today, visible in the night sky the same way it was to the ancient world. Sandro Botticelli's painting, The Birth of Venus, showing her arriving on a shell, remains one of the most recognized images in all of Western art, centuries after it was made. Few figures from this pantheon left a mark on modern language, astronomy, and art all at once. Aphrodite gets remembered as a passive symbol of beauty, but her actual myths put her at the center of the action almost every time. She chose sides in a war, fathered the mythological ancestor of Rome, got caught in her own husband's trap in front of the entire pantheon, brought a statue to life out of genuine sympathy, and turned jealous and cruel toward a mortal she saw as a rival. Next on this channel, Hephaestus, the husband who caught her, and the story of what happened to him long before that net was ever built.